and other types of educational portals. The characteristics identified included those related to policy statements with respect to the content included in a registry, the content descriptions, the governance of the organization, what services were offered, and operations policies such as quality assurance, user feedback, and others. The report about the group's efforts, including more about the core characteristics, can be found on the DOI on the slide, as well as on the eThread interest group outputs webpage. So now the metadata focus group wants to encourage adoption of the minimal set as much as possible. And so we decided to create an application profile for the set that implementers could use and adapt for their own systems. As for reasons, we were interested in knowing if the minimal set would increase the discovery of resources that was intended. We also want to test the solution to a somewhat controversial recommendation that we made, which is to make all of the metadata properties required. We thought that a generic application profile could be built based on the final recommendation that could be used by a generic system, but we also thought that sub-profiles would be useful for specific implementation systems, which could give us information about whether the core set should be changed to increase adoption. The application profiles have been created using the Dublin Core, as in Dublin Core Metadata Initiative, or DCMI Tabular Application Profile, or DCTAP. The DCTAP is built in a flat spreadsheet format, but it also allows metadata properties to be grouped together as shapes if desired. So the image at the bottom of the slide here gives a glimpse of what our application profile looks like in the basic DCTAP format. The subgroup working on the minimal set profile has created a generic profile for the set and is working on several profile instances that show how several organizations would adapt the generic profile. These profiles will be made available in comma-separated value, JSON LD, and RDF formats, and will be accompanied by an implementation guidance document, so the profiles can be more easily used or adapted by other implementations. We'd love to get your feedback on the work of the metadata focus group by applying the minimal set to your own implementation and documenting how you do it by creating an application profile. If you do so, you'll be letting us know what other properties you think should be added to the minimal set. You could also let us know how helpful the guidance document was for you and what else you think should be included or more clearly explained. We anticipate that our work on the application profiles will be finished this spring, but if you're interested in joining, you can let me know at nhobel@kmotifs.com. The address is on the slide as well. So thanks very much for your interest.
And thank you, Nancy. She's not there. She won't care if you clap, but go ahead and clap anyway. You can go back and listen to the recording and know it was well received. It's always a nice thing. As a further demonstration, just touching on that kind of that history of what this group has been up to. So this is an example of work that has, oh, there's one of our, Yuri, I did not introduce you as one of our former chairs. There's Yuri, one of our former chairs back there too. Sorry to interrupt. Hi. But all building up to where we are now, thinking both about technical applications as well as practical applications of education and training in this field. So one of the other efforts that this group is putting forward is this event, A Decade of Data, celebrating 10 years of the Research Data Alliance. Within, we have this whole year of events, which is amazing. And so on May 17th, there is learning resources with minimal metadata application profiles, so you can learn more about what Nancy was just talking about and in that particular thing. Katya, did you want to say more about that event? No. Okay, got it. We're moving on. But I would encourage you, I think this is really some incredible work that has been done by a very dedicated group of people, thinking again about how all of us as a community of educators, of trainers, of teachers can come together and build on our efforts together rather than operating in silos where we're each making that one session we all make about welcome to research data management. Here are some characteristics of quality data, right? We all do that, but there's no reason why we all each have to do that alone and can't bring that together to learn and build from each other, build on each other. So one of our other events that is coming up as well is this Fellowship of the Data. I love that title. This is the RDM Trainer Community Meeting that's happening in person. Yes, in person in June 22nd and 23rd in Berlin, Germany. So please, again, if this is something that you're interested in this idea of the Research Data Manager Trainer community, check out the link, check out the registration, see if that's something you'd like to participate in. If you're interested, all of these slides are shared, are available. The links are in the notes. Yes, you have a question.
The dates are shifted by 1 day.
The dates are not quite right. They are actually
21st, 22nd of June.
the 21st and 22nd of June. I am so glad we are now recording this session because we will know the truth. We'll go back and correct the slides. All right. So remember I mentioned before about how the next co-chair could be you? Remember that? Think about it. I hope you thought about it. Yes, did you think about it? It's your chance. Take your shot. Come up after the session, talk to me, talk to Laura, Patty. This is a wonderful opportunity to build community, to build connections, to take that step into leadership in this space. And if you're interested in any of those aspects, if you're interested in saying, hey, this is a need that I feel needs to be recognized in the education and training community, I want to work on this. I want to bring people together around this. This is the role for you. This is a really great community to work with. Can't say enough good things about it. It would take the rest of the session, and that's not what we're here for. But please come and talk to one of us about what this looks like, what the work looks like, and how you can become involved. All right. That brings us to our first presentation. But yes, before that, we need to do some things. Oh, my Zoom account on this is being signed in on another device. I think and our tech help has gone.
Oh, well.
and now the message is gone. Okay, anyone else know anything about that? No? No? Moving on. I'd like to take this brief moment and invite everyone to pick up that card you almost sat on earlier. You have the card?
And if you don't have, there are enough. Just pick one.
Just pick up a card if you don't have a card because you didn't sit down. I see some of you. Grab a card from a seat. You will notice a letter on that card, a suspiciously familiar letter, perhaps. We'll talk about the cards later. Pick up that card, and I invite you now to separate yourself into the group by the letter on your card. Looks like we have quite a few people in here, so we're actually going to go into 5 groups. So, and this is how we're going to do it. No, we're just doing, oh, no, I'm told, no, we're doing 4 groups. That is the only option. That's it. That's all we're doing. So we're going to ask the Fs, because this is from my point of view. So sorry, the Fs are going to start over here, right? The A's are going to be back in that corner. Okay. The I's are going to be back in that corner. Oh, I hear the grumble of, we have to move, but I was settled. And the R's are right here. And the others are like, I'm taking this opportunity to stand up and going to another session, which is good, I encourage that. So we have F's over here. A's in the back corner. I's in this corner. And R's up here. If you are online, do not fear. Claudia is taking care of you. Okay. Yes, sit down, grab chairs, move the chairs, reorganize the room.
Sure. Yes.
many do we need?
Yeah.
Like this.
All right. Congratulations on turning into the fun and excellent job.
So I don't have to put it. From one.
I am going to, we are signing into, I'm just going to allow that. Or
Just
deny that. The next
Allow?
word.
I think there was a problem with like bonding.
Oh, okay. We'll see how it goes. I will be on the participants while you share the video. Copy.
So you have time to move your chairs.
Yeah, you can
See the screen.
We're sharing the screen. You want to turn around? Great.
Yes. Ready?
Yes.
Hi, this is Sandra Schulz from the University of Hamburg, and together with my co-author Kati Biernacka, we want to try to give you information about how to integrate research data management in higher education, and therefore we want to present you our approach in computer science. To give you an idea about what we did in this area, we explain first the goals of our approach, then the process, and we also want to look in the future and see what comes next. Our general idea was to bring research data management in computer science higher education because the content seems to be closely connected, and also the computer scientists are handling a lot of data. So they really need to know about research data management. Therefore, we needed to uncover potential specialities of research data management in computer science, what means that we need to know about the specific data and also the settings where the researchers handle data and what they need to know. And with the goal to align computer science and research data management also in modules for the university. And the last goal is to develop helpful material for the students and also PhD candidates, but what is much more important also for the lecturers to help them teach research data management in computer science appropriately. And now I want to present you the process to achieve those goals. And here as a first step, we were parsing through the educational goals. So here we took from the Gesellschaft für Informatik, or the Society for Computer Science, the recommendations what to teach for bachelor and master students in CS, so in computer science. We also passed the examinations and study regulations of 3 universities for computer science, and both with the goal to identify research data management content and where to integrate it in what specific module. Here you can see the outcomes of step 1, where we identified some modules in the computer science curriculum, like Introduction to Programming, and also some other modules. And here we want to look deeper in the introduction of programming, where we identified some research data management content. For example, the versioning and also metadata and the software lifecycle were all contents which were named in the modules. And that's why we also wanted to combine the CS content and the research data management content and develop the material to integrate both of them. The second step is to create personas and also scenarios, because the area of computer science is really wide. And that's why we wanted to narrow it down to specific contents which can happen for students or PhD students. And here we created 3 different personas. Here you can see the first one, Carla, with the age of 21, studying computer science, with the target degree of the bachelor. In the scenarios, then we described the thesis or the whole situation of the persona. Like for Carla, that the content of her thesis is she wanted to know about the students' usage of collaboration tools. She wanted to use the method of interviews and has participants from Germany and Cuba to see commonalities and difference of both countries. Afterwards, we described for this scenario what kind of research data management decisions she needs to do, or also what knowledge she needs to have, like to create an informed consent, the questionnaire, also need to know about data protection regulations and ethical considerations. Here we created really diverse personas and scenarios to hopefully address a lot of computer science students. In the last step, we applied research data management content to the scenarios. What means that for each content we picked from research data management, like the FAIR principles, we described for every scenario what is needed to know for the student, and where to have the checklists and also some examples with the worksheets to gain research data management skills. And the result of this process is our book, Research Data Management in Computer Science Education, we like to share and discuss with you today. But here you also have our contact information.
All right. Thank you very much for that presentation. Okay, as you can see. And Dr. Schultz for the presentation. I think this was really about, thinking about how to integrate some of our principles more completely into a given curriculum. So what we'd like to ask you to do now, what we'd like to invite you to do, is to turn to your groups. This is why you're in groups. And start talking about, within your experience, when you think about how you've considered integrating some of your workshop materials, some of your training, integrating that more fully into the day-to-day experience of researchers themselves, right? Whether it's through saying, hey, we want to integrate this into a class that they're already taking, right? So it's not like it's an add-on, it's a part of the way we know research data management, research data ethics, data stewardship should be. It's a part of things researchers are thinking about as they go through, rather than an extra thought that you have to stick on to the research that you're doing, right? So thinking about that space of integration in those ways, and talk amongst your groups about what you found successful. Where did you find materials for this? Where do you think you would go look for materials for this? If you have done this thing, if you have produced your own materials that do this, you have curricula that integrate with existing courses. If you have curricula that address this idea of integrating this into the practical, rather than adding that on, how did you end up sharing those materials? Okay, so within your groups, I'm going to ask you to appoint someone who is going to wear the hat of note taker, so that your discussions are not forgotten. There is a place in the collaborative notes to take your notes. Elect someone to be a reporter, it can be the same person, and elect someone to be a timekeeper. as well for your discussion. Is that all clear? Are there any questions? Yes, in the back.
Can you post the collective notes one more time?
Yes, they're right here. It's the bit.ly is the capital ETHRD little P20. It's in the chat as well. It's yeah, we put it as many places as we could think of. So I hope it works. Any other questions?
How much time do we?
Laura, how much time do we have for discussion?
Discussion, the whole, pardon me, the whole slot is 15 minutes.
How much do we have left?
We have about 2 minutes. left.
We have 10 minutes. Let's call it 9 because we're people. Okay.
It's probably not.
No, let's get started. Oh, do I have to do this? Yes.
Where do we are?
Very long document, I don't know.
There should be a second.
If you're remote, could you please enter the breakout room you have been assigned to? Thank you. You can have your discussion in there. It will bring you back, I promise.
And this is really about integrating.
I'm not taking notes. Because I don't know what.
You get one. I'm gonna go put that in.
Also, we're already in training. Yeah, anyway, I mean, I personally work. But and I work with solvers. Maybe I'm not the right person here. But one example is that we support on our so basically we let our service. We're saying like, yeah, we're gonna in 4 weeks, we're gonna try and transform this into a package.
So I guess.
And first the basic, and they go into the basic. I'm back at the end of the 4 weeks. So that's. I think yeah, well, I mean, so we're
Social things and so you could
but
safety. Anyway.
and people come to us from universities and research.
I engage them. So now it's the paper. Science, that was that training.
And the idea was really that.
I got in there.
That it could be contextualized
Getting back. That's it. How many?
And so it's very much maybe similar on you. Some of the skills are being important, but that gets less.
I think it's branding. So like you see, say IBM and the research are like, oh, that's not boring, or I don't really have data or anything like that. So definitely like sneaking it in. Yeah.
Yeah, it's full curriculum. Because if it's going to be
On the coding at IBA, IT is responsible research. IDF.
Yeah.
We have quite a small amount of every single class. So what we've done is we've set up exercises that students do afterwards. That reflects and it ties back to either the ethics content or the RDM. That way, after students do like they learn then we always bring them back. That way we feel like. And it's not
So take another minute or two to wrap up your discussion and we'll come back.
Study that we have done. They're not long, they're like, then usually before a coffee break, and then students go and keep.
We don't have.
Yeah, me and.
No.
Mike's been.
Like.
But if anyone wants a session, we've just got money from the elsewhere to actually get coverage. Watch its space within the next month or two, we will be able to.
Time looking back. I admitted it, it's not as they have research.
And I guess one
for that is clearing up what social science problems are that. So that's. There was an effort in the past of setting up a catalog. Laura was trying to lead on a couple, maybe serial. Then or one and single person exercise and that it's supposed to be the class of. Yeah, well, it's. But it's not, yeah, but it's not a catalog. It's not a catalog, but it's, you know, kind of a place, but nobody puts anything there. But the course.
All right, that was some great discussion. I hear you all chattering and talking. It's wonderful. You'll come back to the discussion so you can continue that. Absolutely. But right now, I would like to invite up our next presenter and quickly close the things that are blocking the presenter. Because here we go. They'll be presenting on hands-on methods to deliver research data management training to researchers.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jan. I'm a trained biologist and since 2 years a data steward. And my main focus is on training basics. And I find it quite useful to bring some fun into the what is often perceived as a dry topic of research data management. So I figured I would show you a little bit of that. People back from the breakout rooms. No. Hey, yeah, people are coming back. All right. Okay. So the topic is gamification and research data management training. And I want to give you just 3 little points. Why would we want to play? What does gamification mean and how can it work? So playing has benefits, certainly, and crucially, it can provide a positive environment that instigates connectedness, that is making people feel joy or surprise or pride or whatever. So a lot of positive emotions are related to that. And that is good for our brains to learn stuff. So in the end, playing gives us the opportunities to practice skills and apply knowledge and get it even better into our brains because it's positive.
Sorry, you are talking about playing like computer playing or playing with others peers?
Everything.
Because playing in computer games can also have really upsides or downsides.
Yes, of course.
So
Yeah, we're not talking about toxic environments here. The problems girl gamers have in computer games. No, this is more, I was thinking about board games basically, mostly, but there are as well computer games that have the same effects or can have the same effects. But in research data management, I'm currently not going in the direction of computer games.
Also not all 3.
Because gamification is often understood in the strict sense of bringing computer game elements in a virtual setting to a non-computer game content or context, like having badges or the leaderboard that you have all in that Hoover app, where we have some sense of, oh, let's compete because I want to be top on the leaderboard. So that also is already a gamification aspect. I like to frame it a little bit wider. So I would say any gameplay element in a non-gaming context. So for example, the time limits, that is maybe not so much given by the computer game element. Competition would also be one piece of that. And I think there's a spectrum of how much you gamify your content by just using one single element, for example, going all the way to fully designed educational games and having in the middle some ideas of just adding a little content to existing games and to existing game mechanics. We have here a little copy pasta. So Taboo is more in the middle of, if we add research data management terms to the game Taboo, then we have sort of a middle ground gamification, if you want. We have also the research data management scary tales, which I would put a little bit more over here. And they're fully designed educational games as well. If we apply gamification to our training, we can have one or multiple of those goals. The minimum would be raising awareness and motivate people to actually think about FAIR, for example. We can aim to strengthen and develop skills. Often misconceptions can be resolved if people start talking about it in a gameful, playful manner. Similarly, we can check whether the knowledge is actually there that we wanted to train. We provide opportunities for practice and implementation. And generally, we have the chance that knowledge is actually transferred from short-term to long-term memory. So on the left-hand side of the spectrum, by just including some gamification aspects, we could, for example, play Pictionary with RDM terms. We can use the Wheel of Fortune, which we do frequently in trainer games, for example, trainer games sessions, trainer courses, or playing Taboo, which we will do later on, which is why I'm coming back to Taboo all the time. And I wanted to also bring you some examples of the specifically designed games For example, the dilemma game where you have or where you can choose between different options of how can resolve real life dilemmata. Or using Lego for the metadata for reproducibility game. Waiting for pictures to be taken. But the links are in the slides, and I'm sure we'll get the slides as well. So if you want to implement gamification in any shape or form in your training, of course, you have to consider your style and your audience. So if you don't like the game that you are trying to play with the people, it will not be fun. And fun is quite important here. So also the audience plays a role, because all the professors, if you say game, they say, well, I'm not a child, what the fuck? So, maybe say you do an activity and not frame it as a game. That would be one way, or just yeah, adapt to your audience. Younger people are often more knowledgeable about different game mechanics, so you can try playing more complex games with them. The topic that you're trying to convey and what people are supposed to gain from the game is important. And of course, think about how many participants, how long time, and all that stuff. If you do training, you know that you have to think about that. So generally, what do you want to achieve? Okay, so let's play. Because you're not professors, I can say what we're playing. Yeah, some of you are professors. Sorry, you're not here as professors, maybe. Okay, so you are already in 4 groups. And actually the cards that you have, and if you don't have a card yet, I think there are some floating around still that can assign you to a group. So we have the F here, the A over there, the I in the back, and the R in the front. You can also just move to a group. And I designed the cards as another tool of training possibility. So in this case, we use them to put you into groups. And maybe start talking, but that is not a topic right now. So we want to play taboo as well, and we have prepared envelopes for each of the groups here in presence. Online, we will do the wheel of name things, which Patty will describe in the chat. So I continue to explain the presence taboo. You can open the envelopes when we start the game and pick someone who starts. You draw something from the envelope. That can be just a piece of paper with a term or one of the cards. If you draw a card, focus on the boldly printed aspect. And then explain the term or word to your peers without using any part of the term. So basic taboo rules. And the person who guessed first correctly continues with the next word. So I always like to play the inclusive version, where I try to let everyone explain at least once. You can, of course, decide in your group that you want a competitive version and collect as many points as you can by just keeping the snippet that you guessed correctly or explained correctly. And of course, there's also the possibility to do a higher difficulty if we exclude further words, going more for the classic taboo style cards, which we're doing not today. So while you're playing, you can already consider the questions for discussion afterwards. Like, do you have other ideas for gamification? How can you gamify your training, and what works well and what does not? But let's first start with taboo, and you have 10 minutes. Have fun.
What is data? Yeah. Wow, this is going better. We're going in a circle. Okay. No, it's okay. I see.
So we only has recording the fires.
Oh, wait, geez, I think there, we want to go. So I have to say do some. So I think the phone. So I like. Let's go then.
It's not higher.
When am I supposed to tell you?
Sunday.
Some term.
What
Oh, sure.
or no?
Yes.
I think it's one of the first. Yes.
Wow. So we have stations. Yeah, that was really.
Might as well.
Yeah. License.
They're all license.
Yeah, but with some.
I think
When do you do?
bring them out. Send them all.
Right in the state, they just say.
That's all going good. We need to bring everyone out.
Yeah, yeah.
Minutes
Not
or
machine actor,
but
but.
All right. Yeah, different.
One of the. That one. The abbreviations.
I talked to them.
Question.
But specifically, if you're like.
But it's the term.
That are not. Data is just gonna have a balance, but yeah, so we should also, when you process this. No, so it's, yes. Thank you. It's a long one. Yeah, open format. It doesn't. No. That you're digging in.
Also not a word. You do. We could say that's also. That was a lot of very other. How do you do that? You've got the card. Right.
You're having so much fun. I really hate to break up the game, but I think this emphasizes how important play is, right? What you can learn from doing that play. So I'm going to pass this back to Jean at this point. So we're going to stop, like, going to give ourselves a round of applause for the game. All right. Back to you. Oh,
Access unnecessary.
Sorry to the online people, you also have to come back. And it would be great if you could put all the cards back into the envelope, like tuck them back. And if you're interested in having such a game, come talk to me.
No.
You have the question.
Okay, picking up a thought. So you had everything.
I was asked how the card game is supposed to work.
How you use it?
How I use it? Well, you are my second round of guinea pigs. So it's really fresh. But it's basically designed to be a training tool. And depending on the goal you have, you can select a different set of the cards. You have seen that the aces are just the letters, and then king and queen and boy are the main principles, and so on and so forth. So there are some different aspects in the card game, and then you can hand out the cards, and the bonus effect is that it is also playable as a card game. Anyhow,
You'll link to where we can order these cards.
you have to talk to me. You cannot order them. Yeah.
this is the link to ordering these cards.
You don't have them online?
No,
Because
not
we have
yet.
a collection that is called Open Science Game Library that we did in Senado in Jupering project in the UP Alliance. And we would like to join to have
Yes.
your material there.
Yes, it's going to
Just put it
happen.
in the notes, and I will tweet it now, okay?
Awesome. We are also going to write a paper about that. And there will be an upgrade, including QR codes. So we have plans for that. And now I can click. Okay. So still having in mind the questions for discussion, like what else could you play in your training? Can you imagine how to gamify it in any way? And what would or does work well and what does not? And do we have time to actually discuss this, or shall I just leave that for later? All right, so I will stop here and thank you for playing. And give back to Amy.
Thank you, John.
Maybe I did something wrong, I'm sorry.
No,
Yes.
did everything quite well. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks to everyone for doing everything quite well so far. I hope you continue because we have more to do. So what I'm going to ask you to do now is to get back in your groups and remind each other who your note taker and all that stuff is, right? And so go back to your discussion again with this refreshed experience, thinking about this play aspect of bringing training into something a little bit more hands-on, a little bit more participative, things like that. And from your own experiences again, what have you found successful? What about the materials? There's a great games library out there. Who else knew about that? The games library. We have learned about this. Check out the notes. There is a link. Check out Twitter. There is a link for that. Thinking about how you share your materials. And then, so you're going to spend till about 10 after on that discussion. And then we're going to come back and each group is going to report out their themes of success and compare contrast materials discoverability. I'm going to ask you to think about this in terms of newspaper headlines, like what is the major point, 10 words or less kind of deal, right? So we can share productively and expediently, quickly. Does that make sense to people? We got this? All right, go for it. Till 10 past.
It's the date of the program.
You're continuing with.
So far, over the next game. Well, sometimes. Let me go into. It's a cocktail.
And we did a study where we're wonderful, and when they do throughout the week. You live in creative, like a collection and a very fun hours, whatever, like starting at eight, still use it.
Yeah, and we don't start out under the. I would check it. You have the. If we could copy, I would remember. Pick up like software for.
No, that's a data artist.
Ah, that's fine.
That's the same team.
But yeah.
And then I tag on for the software one.
Second one is like
It might be, I don't know, like the data. Okay, no, ours is not until the.
Okay.
thing.
Go ahead with the step like that.
That sounds fun.
Yeah, it was kind of fun, in a dry way.
This is like a, you make choices. So basically you can decide to like older.
Like the data, all you have is sketches.
I mean, you have endless time, but you only have to. It
Yeah, it wasn't.
So
We started the library.
about.
So
I just read. Okay,
The library.
Just that presentation.
It's not here.
Maybe. No, you know, we're over again, this is data managers.
Oh, that section where she was hunting. And then
Not a lot, not up to that. Software or paper.
It does.
Oh, it does.
It does, okay.
And it's not confusing. How's it? You know, surprising.
Because, but it is. And then.
Yeah.
Explain it to everyone else, but it's the information, but it just gets. You're going a little bit.
I don't.
Already getting into like other forms.
I'm from the National Biomedical Business.
And then get like
It is complicated, and they have. But it does have some icebreaker as well, and I find back to go in learn what they have to learn, but just run our conversation contract.
Yeah, no, exactly. But the moment
sometimes it's like materials and stuff. I guess.
Quite a bit of an effort.
And then it gets.
Yeah, everybody's might take it.
Yeah.
Sorry.
our organization also some of our research it's like really using that persona. So have different target groups. Fully grown researchers. And I know so you are people in the main need
Really model
organization,
persona.
then you are, and you do realize that everybody.
Well, I mean, it's more like you have examples here that like the classic biomedical means.
Looks okay, that you
really like game.
I don't like things like
I just want a library of catalogs. They all based on the area, right?
I think it's endless. Everybody continuously doing something. It's always someone new doing something new.
That is about the library. Yeah. Catalog. At least.
One that has overlap.
Honor and glory. So that's more like.
I
think it's having this kind of thing, you know, when you have a mentee or something, and then there's questions about, or maybe also voting things. Yeah, you know, and like, I think having the visualization there, the audience like for who's in the room with them helps a lot in setting some atmosphere for the.
Yeah, and I think it's sort of nice already.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So you can find people and then they are leading the collection of ideas, whatever, and they don't need so like even it's quite a ritual. Actually using them. The problem that actually you don't have any indication of this going
Yeah.
Not applicable. Yeah, it's so sustainable.
Yeah.
Once I was 15 years, I mean,
I'd like to ask you to start wrapping up your discussions, putting your headlines together so we can do our report out, all right? 2 more minutes.
There.
In known games. Version.
You will do it.
I'm just connecting dots and grades and I brought into notes the and the Senado collection. It's not about and you sort of yes,
Yeah, kids have that game.
That's a factor. I mean, it's not difficult for people to get into the game. You make your own games. I mean, the first version has some flaws, but the gameplay is and you have too many hurdles for the people that you can adapt an existing game.
Basically,
yeah.
All the lesson around.
I'm not sure. I have taken notes in like user characters.
Invented her own games for engaging So people in, what's the overlap between the packages, what is the data? So you have to get the bingo, games, they also on them. But he was a very good person.
All right. Do you have your headlines ready? Yes, ready to go? I hear chuckles of affirmation and confidence is what I'm hearing. Yes, yes. That is what we have. Okay, that's great. We are now going to move into the report out statement. As people are coming back. Are we all coming back? To the centered space, I would like to offer an apology to our online participants. We had an issue with joining and leaving and connectedness, which is why you got sent to different rooms from the first time. But we wanted to make sure that no one was in a room all by themselves as well, because it's such a disenchanting experience. So, all right. I wanted to use Poll Everywhere for this, but I'm not super confident about that. So I don't know if you did that or not, but we'll see how that works. Oh, I'm thinking it's not working, but we'll give it a try. So instead of that, I'm assuming you put it in your notes. I would like to go to group F. What is your headline?
So one of our things basically is like almost sort of disguising the RDM in a way, like so teaching people RDM, but when they don't realize that they're being taught RDM. We say RDM, that's
It's like if you say ethics, they're like, no, I'm out of here. Yeah.
One thing, that's probably one of our key success things.
Okay, so we would call that the zucchini bread method of research data management, where you hide the vegetable in the bread. Yes. Thank you. Thank you, group F. Group A.
Using fantasy to reimagine training.
Would you expand a little? I appreciate the headline. You did a great job. There are so many ways fantasy can be reinterpreted. Could you talk add a little bit more of a tease about what that fantasy might be?
Absolutely. So through the lens of gamification, we were discussing a lot of examples where folks have encouraged role playing or different games to bring awareness to situations you might experience while working in data management. So that was really the key goal there.
Thank you for that. I'm wondering if this fits into one of my favorite cartoons, which is like, pretend you're the scientist who has to recreate the research. What happens next? Thank you for that. Group I, what do you have for your headline there? Who's your reporter?
I've got several. So one is research data management must be in context, both in an education context and like knowing your students. Modularity enables flexibility, and so many games to play, so little time to play them.
So thank you for that modularity, context, and sense of overwhelmedness with all the potential fun you can have with research data management, which is a great problem. But I really like that idea of modularity and suiting the game to the audience. Group R, what do you got going on?
Well, we also have several, but I'll start with the main one that Poland has mandatory courses in RDM and open science for all PhD students.
That's Poland, just one.
Just one people. It's so all disciplines, this is teach, it's teached, and they have doubled the hours. So, and in Netherlands, one university uses software horror escape room to teach those who teach RDM. And there's a link over there. And in Germany, there's example of that you use the persona method to address different target groups to identify what a certain group needs, a certain domain or age group.
Great, thank you for those examples of how people are approaching this issue, these materials, this challenge of trying to get research data management better integrated, more thoroughly incorporated into our actual day-to-day practice as researchers as well. I think those are some great examples. I do hope you've put links to all of them in the notes so that we can come back, so we as a community can come back to those, because that would be delightful. And then also, if they are games, I believe there is a place to put those game materials, and they would love to have your game materials if they don't already. So take a look at that. All right. So I would like to now turn to our online participants. Who is your reporter? What is your headline? Please go ahead and unmute yourself. I believe you should be able to do that. Put it in chat if you're having a job. Or a problem. I hope everyone has jobs, but this is not the place for that discussion. There's a whole jobs board thing. Allison, please proceed.
Hi. Yeah, so we had the thought of using Fair Bingo as a way of consolidating learning. So when people have been on a couple of days of training, getting them to fill in something like a fact to explain terms that they've used, to make sure that they've really understood that. One of the other things that we thought was that the games make good icebreakers at the start of a session. So if you need to know what the students already know and what's their prior knowledge, one suggestion was we have a triangle of things. So it might be something like data management, data collection, and some other point on the triangle, and you get the students to put a post-it note somewhere in the triangle to say where they fit in that when they start, so that then you know what audience you're talking to.
Those are great, both great ideas. Thank you for those, and thank you for the remote group for generating those. I don't recall how many remote groups we had. Was there another group that also wanted to report out or add on? Bless you. All right. Well, thank you everyone for your discussions, for your headlines, for your thoughtfulness, for your participation. Speaking of participation, due to my neglect earlier today, I missed one of our participants. Eva, I think you were going to talk about cities for EOS.
Well, it doesn't matter, but we can do it. And also, well, I written this on. It's just kind of a new project. Can I tell you something like that?
Stand up.
No, I don't want to have the slides and anything. And also my colleague there, Dominique, is also related with this. The only thing that I want to underline is that it considered that every time there is a funded project, this is dissertation or a very a retired person that is engaged with a group in REA, something push and happens. So Skills for EOS is related with education and being people and creating competence centers for EOS research data management, but bigger picture, which is the open science education in Europe. So you're all invited to contribute. What I mentioned before is for another project, because all these projects are related. It's one of the projects related with the alliances, the university alliances in Europe. And we create a collection of games for open science to use in the training. So I put it in the notes, we will be very happy to incorporate your games. And also in the Skills for EOS, one of the things that is important is that we are creating profiles and minimum viable skill sets that Dominique can chime in with this thing. And we are trying to create what is the most challenging thing, which is just nobody's around. I don't know if you know about the Handbook of Open Science, the new course that it has been developed and available in GitHub that is created by the TOPS, the initiative of the United States, that is called Open Science. There are millions of courses scattered over there, and we want to come up with a minimum viable skill set that really addresses different profiles. Probably the one that is more interesting for this group is that one that addresses the profile of data stewards. But we are also going to focus on PhD students, on senior researchers, etc. So that's a new project, and I think it will be a nice contribution. When I told you that we are launching this project, it was at the very beginning, and I said, well, it's good to know that we are in that area, and we can collaborate and just give you some input and use this group of the list of REA to pick your brain if there is something related with the scope of this group. I think is the way that move forward the working groups in RDA. When there is a project and a motivation extra than the willingness and the interest that you all have. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much.
One little thing, I mean, I wanted to show you all this book. I mean, most of you will be aware. I mean, this was one of the outcomes of the PSFAIR project. It's online, open access, but there are also physical copies you can order from the University Press. And if anyone wants to have a look at the physical copy, you can
put the link also in the notes.
Yes. I will put the DOI there. So good if anyone wants to see it.
What's the title?
The title is How to Be Fair with Your Data. So Claudia Engelhardt and others. So it was a collaborative writing and curricula and exercises, all kinds of things in here. Also persona was one approach we looked into.
Thank you, Birgit, for that as well. And I'm sure there are other resources you know about as well. The notes is a great place to put those links. There are also, if you look back at some of the other work of this group, there are those platforms, there are those efforts that are collecting those learning materials into a single location for discovery. Of course, the games portal is one of those. The erstwhile ESIP portal is another one, and I'm sure there are many, many others out there. Hence part of the overwhelmedness that was mentioned by I back in the corner, that we have that. So thinking on this, I'd like to invite us at this point in time to think about this community, the challenges that this community faces, and what is it that this interest group can most effectively do for all of us who have these touch points in education and training. So I invite you at this point, raise your hand. If you're online, also raise your hand or speak up, and let's offer a few ideas for like the next 3 or 4 minutes, and then see if we can get people who are like, yeah, I agree, that's a great idea. I'm going to come help you with that idea. Okay, how does that sound for people? Ideas. What do we need? What can this group do for us together? Yes, in the back with the plan.
It's going to be a little bit of a prompt for a thought that's happening in the next session, but we need to know if these trainings are working. So how are we going to evaluate them? There's a research evaluation box in the next section or in the next breakout. I recommend everyone go to it. But that would be something that I would be interested in learning from others, is how are you evaluating what you're doing?
So thank you very much for that. So evaluation of learning materials, both, there's that aspect of the content. There's also that aspect of deliverability. This is something that we previously discussed in the thinking about what would extended metadata for training materials look like. And this might be part of that extended metadata set, is just providing descriptions around effectiveness, quality, and so on. Yes.
Replication and customization. Well and good to create a great course and make it open source and it works in your institution for your application. But how are you making it accessible so that other organizations with other contexts can reuse it and apply it? If you invented some custom language, that's not very accessible.
No, I think that's a fair point and a good one. Thinking about, as a community, what can we do in terms of not just saying, hey, here are my materials, but providing clues, description, evening files about what context was this originally delivered in. So people know whether it would be fit for use for their own context, maybe some indication of how it might be adapted to another context, some indication of if there are specific, unique terminologies, languages that are part of this, if there are translations to other spoken languages or other written languages that are available for these resources as well. So thinking about those aspects of accessibility. So thank you for that. We have both a evaluation, kind of how successful is it, fit for use as well. I'm getting points at the screen. So is there a point at the screen? Richard, please go ahead. And then I think someone here and here.
Yeah, thank you. Just following up on that point, I think having context-specific training is very, very valuable. But as someone who develops training, so I work a lot with field ecologists, and I draw a lot of our training from the life sciences, but presenting people with ecologists with life sciences training material is just not going to work. But so what I would be really interested in seeing is more adaptable training that you can take up sort of common themes and teach them to more specific domain groups. But it's having that consistency in the language that you use and the principles that you're teaching across different disciplines. I think is very important, and so having a core common set of training to support that, or training material to support that, which you can then adapt as a trainer for a specific audience, would be very useful.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, Richard. I think it reminds me of what the group back here came up with around modularization of training, right? And thinking about if you make your base module and you set aside a space to plug in a specific discipline, examples, context for use, things like that. And again, it's like, does that mean that what this group should do is come up with that base module of training? I think there are a lot of groups that have worked in that area. Or are there different ways that we can be effective in saying, okay, these are the general principles that this base training covers. This is how other disciplines might be plugged into it, or these are the other contexts that can be used in these spaces. Yes, your point?
No, that was my point.
Oh, sorry.
No,
My apologies.
That's exactly.
Other ideas and spaces. There's someone here? No, please.
I'd be curious to hear what topics along the research data management lifecycle we're currently missing in training to evaluate that.
To evaluate the gaps that we have. So this would be like doing a landscape survey of all the materials, or at least the ones that we can find, and saying these are the gaps in the places. Yes.
How much is like pedagogy a topic of conversation in addition to the design of like content and topics, like just pedagogical approaches?
Yeah, I think that might be, you know, one of the gaps that we talk about, and I think it's interesting from speaking for myself now that we talk about pedagogy, or should we be talking about andragogy? Because most often we're really teaching to adults, and there are different frames for how we teach to adults versus how we often teach to children in those settings. So exploring what those aspects are, I think it goes back to context as well. Are we teaching within that traditional classroom space, which is more the pedagogical aspect, or are we teaching hands-on practicum workshops, how you're doing it in your day-to-day life? You came here for a reason to learn a specific thing, which fits more into that andragogy framework, right? And what kind of resources are we providing to each other to be aware of these distinctions, the different practices? Yes.
Extend on the pedagogy andragogy, it's also learning outcomes. One of the, we have a lot of syllabi. If we're going to audit them, if we're going to replicate them, what are the learning objectives that we, from a research data management perspective, want students to have when they come out? Do we have an agreed and accepted set of learning outcomes?
I like this idea as well. An agreed upon a standardized set of learning outcomes. Maybe, you know, it goes along to what are the base principles we're going to talk about, the skills. What's the principle? What's the learning outcomes we want for that principle kind of setup? All right, those are a lot of great ideas. We have 2 minutes left. Which ideas do we want to start working on? Which of those sounds like it's a tractable idea?
Put a list up again.
I think learning outcomes are a great starting point, because auditing and replication and everything else flows from knowing what it is you want to actually achieve.
What it is and what is actually achieved. And I would say, again, this is something that we had talked about in the space of the extended metadata associated with learning materials, is what are the learning objectives that were assigned to that particular learning material, and have that as part of it. So maybe, I think there are a couple of different things that kind of touch on that if we're thinking about, we all produce these learning materials, how do we know what we can use, where we should use it, and what's meant to achieve by those? Maybe it is digging a little bit more into, you know, thinking for ourselves, how do we better standardize those descriptions around our learning materials as a place to achieve? But what are other people's thoughts? Oh, thank you, Laura, for the list of ideas. There are the ideas so far. Yes.
The evaluation of gaps in topics is a super one, because you can evaluate the gaps in topics and then know where your gaps are and then work on creating materials to fill those gaps. But then you also have a working list of resources that are accessible to the community to dive into the things that are covered already. So that could be that might be a nice one to have two outcomes in the one activity.
Yeah, I like that. Other thoughts?
We already have the list of resources.
Well, we have a list.
We have a list of resources. Evaluate, yeah.
Yes, I think you're right. We do have a good solid starting point, that evaluation. So I'm hearing kind of two ideas we've come up with. This is great work, people. Okay. So what we're going to do is come up to me afterwards. Let me know which of these two ideas you are interested in working on. And we'll see what we can develop from there. There is the landscape overview, gap analysis of what we're missing space. There is the space of describing our materials better so we know the context, the objectives, and the quality of them. Yes.
Can I add very quickly that it might be worth also looking at the prerequisites that funders have in order to make your data open and as a way of identifying possible gaps in the learning material.
I love that addition.
That's
Yes.
valuable context for the research.
I think that's a great context. We'll add that into the gap analysis as one of the gaps to measure against. Yes, not just the life cycle, but requirements that we know funders have.
Exactly.
Nicely done. All right. Please, everyone, give yourselves a round of applause for some great work. Really happy with this group. You did a wonderful job. You all deserve lunch.
Please
return your cards. We don't want to be playing with half a deck.
It's not mine.